Oops. Guess we should wait a little bit, just.
Good morning. Sorry for the delay. We're having a couple technical difficulties over here.
We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Just going to give it a few more minutes for a few more attendees to join.
Get the homeroom.
You might want to mute during the music.
We're going to get started in a minute. I'm just going to wait for the music to stop playing in the background. We're just gonna get started in a minute. I'm just waiting for Thriller to stop.
We can't compete with Michael Jackson.
No. It's fading, I think. All right, so good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sorry there was a confusion. I think something went out that said the presentation would be in the auditorium as well. So if you're joining us over Zoom, welcome. If you have people who missed this, we will be recording the presentation and we can send that out to anybody who's interested. All right. Also, just some logistical things. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A and we will get to them at the end of each of our sections of the presentation. And then if something comes up after the webinar, please feel free to email one of us. Here's our agenda for the day. We'll go over the counselor assignments, the college application process, the college search process, standardized testing, and financial aid. So it should be about an hour and a half max. If you're not sure who your child's counselor is, maybe take a screenshot of this slide. We break down by alphabet. So Ms. Barbone works with students with the last names A through G for this class. I'm sorry, I spelled your name wrong there. And their email address is there. It's Elizabeth_Barbone. I'm Miss McDonald, and I work with students in the middle of the alphabet, last names H through M. And then Mr. Shearer works with students in the end of the alphabet, last names M-E through Z. And Mrs. Kane, if you need to reach out to Mrs. Kane, she's our secretary and she will help with transcripts and anything you need. So if you can just click on this link, Ms. Barbone, this is a really great resource for students. It's available on our high school website. So if you go to the high school website under the school counseling page, this is our post-secondary or junior planning guide. And you can see in the table of contents, all the information that is there. There's an overview of Naviance. There's information about applying to colleges, the college application process. And it's just a really great resource for you to refer back to if you have any questions about anything we go over today. So we understand that as a parent of a junior, you might be feeling stressed out. Thinking about this process, it's really overwhelming, but we're here to help you and support you along the way. There is a college for everybody. I think a lot of students are feeling overwhelmed and stressed out about whether they'll get into college. There is a college for every single person. So whether that's a community college or a four-year school, we will help your child to find that match. And we'll go over all the different components involved in that process today. Wait, go back, sorry. Oh, sorry. So this is just an overview of the top admissions factors that are looked at when colleges are looking at your child. This is just an overview. I'm going to go into more detail about each of them as I go through the presentation. Some colleges will look at one of these factors. Some will look at all of these factors. It really just depends on the schools. For the most part, the transcript, the grades in the classes, and the strength of the curriculum will be the most important factor for all colleges. And then all of these other factors are either considered or not considered, just depending on the college. The common data set, which I wrote on the bottom there, is a really great tool. You can Google common data set and the name of any university, and it will give you an overview of what that college is looking for. It will give you the most recent data from the previous year's acceptance and let you know what the most important factors are. There's a chart that tells you that grades are most important, that standardized test scores are considered, but maybe not the most important. It also gives you information about financial aid, what students are getting accepted based on race, ethnicity, gender. Any information you might want to know, or maybe too much information, is available on the common data set. So that's a great resource for you to use as you navigate this college application process. Okay, you can go on. So the transcript, which includes the rigor of the classes, which shows if students take honors or AP courses. This is the most important part of the college application process, no matter what school your child's applying to. This includes all the courses they've taken throughout high school and their final grades. It also indicates, like I said, the level of the course they've taken, whether it's academic, honors, or AP. And this is what the colleges will look at first. So we provide the colleges with a school profile, and they'll use that to compare what classes are offered. It lists all the courses that are offered at Springfield, and they'll use that to compare to the transcript to decide if your child has taken advantage of what's offered at Springfield. The transcript reveals their academic interests also. So if students are interested in going to business and they're taking a lot of business courses, that would show the colleges that that's something that they have an interest in, and they're not just maybe blindly going into that major, that they've had experience in those courses. The GPA and the class rank are also a part of the transcript. So each student's weighted and unweighted GPA and class rank will be calculated at the end of each year. The final junior year GPA and class rank is what students will use to apply to college. So if you have questions about how to calculate GPA or class rank, that can be found in the curriculum guide, which is on the high school website. I one other thing to note about class rank and GPA, it does continue to calculate through senior year. So colleges will see the senior year classes that students are taking. They're going to look to see that they're challenging themselves, and they will get that final GPA and class rank for whatever school they decide to go to. There are some colleges that will want to see senior year grades. So maybe a student has struggled freshman and sophomore year, but they're doing really well junior year. They might want to see those senior year grades to show that the child is still continuing to work hard and do well in high school. And then activities. So we list activities on the transcript. We have students complete a student activity sheet. So colleges will also be looking at that. They also list that on their applications, all the activities they've been involved in high school. If your child is somebody who hasn't been involved in high school yet, or hasn't found ways to get involved outside of school, there's still time. We would encourage students to get involved in meaningful activities. Not just join 10 clubs to add to their resume. The colleges will see through that, but maybe volunteer outside of school, get a part-time job, or find ways to get involved in school junior and senior year. Quality is definitely more important than quantity. If your child's only involved in one club, but they're dedicating hours to that club, maybe they have a leadership role, that's something that the colleges will look at more highly than if they joined a whole bunch of clubs junior or senior year. If your child needs help trying to find ways to get involved, they can reach out to one of us and we can help them. I'm sorry. And then Mr. Shearer is going to talk to you more about ACT and SAT scores. Since COVID, many schools were made test optional, and I'm sure Mr. Shearer will go over that. But here's a link for fairtest.org, which lists all the schools that are test optional. Also on that common data set that I referred to before, it will show the percentage of students who are submitting scores. I'm sorry. And what those average scores are. So for many schools, like I said, they've gone test optional. Some schools have said they'll be test optional moving forward for the foreseeable future. I went to a webinar the other day with Harvard and some other Ivy League schools, and many of them said they're test optional until 2020 or 2030. So a really long time from now. But for the most part, most of the schools will be test optional when your children are applying. And then the letters of recommendation. This is also an important part of many applications, especially maybe not necessarily for the larger schools. Some schools don't even look at these, but we always recommend students get at least 1 to 2 teacher recommendation letters, in addition to a counselor letter, which is separate from the teacher letters. Students should ask their, I'm so sorry, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. So students should plan to ask somebody from junior or senior year. Academic teachers are ideal. So if they know maybe they want to major in something in the sciences, maybe their junior or senior year science teacher. Ideally, junior year teachers are best because they've known them for longer. They'll know them for the whole junior year. And it should be somebody who can speak positively about them in their class. It doesn't have to be the class they got an A in, or maybe maybe it's a class they did a special project in, or they worked hard, or they came every day during lunch and learned to get help. But just somebody who can speak positively about them. Maybe, like I said, a subject they want to major in. For ours, I'm so sorry.
Do you want me to take over, Beth?
I'm so sorry. I just have this like tickle in my throat. It only happens when I speak. So maybe I shouldn't speak anymore. Anyway, so like I said, teachers handle recommendation letters differently and in their own way. So some teachers prefer that students ask them in the summer or before the summer. We recommend, sorry, the music is starting again. Some students or some teachers like to write them over the summer. So we always recommend that students ask their junior year teachers at the end of the year, sometime before they leave for the summer. Everybody will require something different. Some teachers require a resume. Some have a questionnaire they have you complete. The counselors have a questionnaire that we have students complete so that we can write a letter. But it's important for them to ask them early. One thing to keep in mind, in a small school, there's about 10 teachers that get asked to write most of the letters. So it's important to ask them early and just give them whatever they need when they ask for it. It's also sometimes acceptable to ask for a coach or a club advisor. If that's the case, we can work with your students to get those letters sent to their college. All right, the application, the essay or the personal statement. Many colleges require at least one essay, and some include additional supplemental essays as well. And the topics and lengths vary. Ever since COVID and a lot of colleges moving to test optional, the essay has become more important than ever. So for some schools, if you go test optional, you have to do an additional essay or additional questions. But the essay really is a great way for students to show how they write, and also to show them the admissions officers something about themselves that's not anywhere else in their application. Many college admissions reps, all college admissions reps, are reading hundreds to thousands of essays. So it's important that they are brief. For the common application, which I think Ms. Barbone will talk more about in a little bit, the essay, the word count is like 250 to 650 words. So they're short essays, but they have to be meaningful. So we can work with students, we can help them. There's also information in the planning guide about tips about writing college essays. We recommend starting in the summer. The essay prompts are all available now. Sometimes they change a little bit, but usually by the spring, the updated essay prompts are available. So they really can start brainstorming any ideas between now and the start of the school year. So the essays, I would like to mention that they should share your child's voice. I think a lot of students get these over edited essays and the colleges can see right through that. So they should just share your child's voice. Don't be over edited, and be straightforward and honest about the person that they are. Some essays are optional, some are required. I would always recommend writing the optional essay. It's your child's way to show them something about themselves. Like I said, that's not already in the application. So always take the option to write the essay and give them more information. And like I said, the planning guide has some tips for essay writing as well, the one I referred to in the beginning. Okay, you can move on to the next slide. And then some additional components of the application process, interviews. A lot of schools are starting to move toward interviews now that the SATs have been taken out of the picture for a lot of students. So that's when students need to know their strengths. If there's an optional interview and that's not a strength of a student, then maybe they should opt out of that, or vice versa. If that's a strength of theirs, they should schedule the interview. It's usually over Zoom, or it can be in person. But we can help students prepare for that. There's also information in the planning guide about helping students to prepare for that. Demonstrated interest. Every school looks at this differently. Some schools consider it, some don't. Certainly, if you're applying to a local school like Arcadia, I would recommend getting on campus and showing this, or at least going to see the school that shows students, that shows the admissions reps that you are interested. Whether they consider it or not, it's a benefit to your child to be able to see the campus of the school they're interested in going to. Other really great ways to show demonstrated interest are coming to the admissions rep visits in Springfield. Every day during Lunch and Learn, we have admissions reps who come to speak to Springfield students, and that's just a really easy way for students to show their face, get to know the person who's going to be reviewing their application, and to demonstrate interest. And then finally, special categories. So if a student is interested in applying as a visual or performing arts major, there might be a portfolio or will be a portfolio or an audition. The requirements for all of those different programs are on the admissions websites, and students should be responsible for keeping an eye on those deadlines and making sure that they're meeting those requirements. Our art and music teachers are wonderful, and they can help our students prepare for those auditions and preparing their portfolios. And then for athletics, if you have a child who is interested in playing a Division I or Division II sport in college, they need to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center in junior year. Your counselors and your coaches can help you with that. If they are interested in going into Division I or II, they should be speaking to their coaches now. Or maybe if it's a fall sport, they've already spoken to their coaches, and reach out to their counselors early so that we can help navigate that process. For all other athletes, Division III club sports, you should also reach out to your coaches and talk to your counselors. We can help you navigate that process, but that process needs to start in junior year. I think that might be it for me.
Good morning. I'm Liz, so I'm going to go over some slides, and then I'm actually going to switch over to Naviance just to show you a couple quick features that your students will be using. So just to review kind of quickly the different types of applications, the common application is still the most commonly used application, and it's one application. The name, address, activities, classes they've taken, the essay, all of those things can be used for multiple schools. Over 500 colleges accept the common application. There are some schools that also accept the common application but have their own application that a student can use from the school's website. If a school accepts the common application and their own application, they do not prefer one over the other. So in many cases, it is in the student's best interest to use the common application just for time's sake, and because they can really focus on making that essay a really solid essay and being able to share that essay with multiple schools rather than doing multiple different college applications from websites with different essays and different types of questions. The common application is the same format. And like I said, a lot of the information they only have to put in once, and then it'll be able to go to different schools. Now, some common application schools may have supplemental essays that's part of the common application that won't be on other schools, and things like that. But for the most part, it's very user-friendly and will save time for the students. The coalition application came out a couple of years ago and was really supposed to be a competitor to the common application. I haven't really seen it taking off too much. I think maybe one or two schools a year I've had students using the coalition application, but students may see that there are a few schools that use that solely. So if they're applying to any of those schools, they would have to use it, but in most cases, students can use the common application. The Pennsylvania State School System also has one application that can be used for any of the state schools. That's like Kutztown, Millersville, Bloomsburg, East Stroudsburg, where they're filling out a lot of the same information and then can just check which Pennsylvania state schools they want to apply to through that application. And then there's also the Common Black College application, which is similar to the common application, where they can, a lot of the information they just have to do once, but then they can kind of click off which HBCUs they want that application to go to. So those are the different types, the most common applications you'll see. Like I said, some schools, if you go to their website and then hit the apply now, it's just going to link them right to the common application, because many schools only use the common application, where some schools might have their own application available online, but also the option to use the common application. So if students have questions about that, they can come see us. Just to review the different types of deadlines, and they're always creating new ones, but the ones that are out there right now, early decision 1 and 2, that is a legally binding contractual application. If a student applies early decision, they sign a contract that the parents also sign off on, and the school counselor also has to confirm that they've had a conversation or email, making sure that the student and family understand that contract. Early decision is basically saying you are committing to that school before you're even accepted. So if a student applies early decision and is accepted, they are expected to enroll there, and the schools also expect that the student will withdraw their application or applications from any other schools that they've applied to, because they won't be going there. So there's a contract they'll have you read. The early decision 2 part is something that came around maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, where it's a later deadline. So if possibly somebody applied early decision to a school November 1st and then found out January 1st that they weren't accepted early decision, an early decision 2 deadline might be January 15th. So at that point, they're out of the first contract and could sign another contract for an early decision 2 deadline. So that's early decision. You can only apply to 1 early decision school at a time. So until you're declined from the first one, you wouldn't be able to apply to the second one. Early action is not binding. So if a student gets accepted early action, they do not have to go to that school. They still have till May 1st to make a decision of where they're going to go. You can apply to multiple schools early action. It's typically November 1st, November 15th. Students typically hear back by January 1st, whether they've been accepted to early decision or early action schools. So that's a benefit to kind of know by January, some options at that point. Early action and early decision are also messages that you're sending to colleges. So obviously early decision is the strongest message you can send to a college. I'm committing to you before you even accept me. You're my first choice. Like, we're all in. We don't care about financial aid. Just that's it. So for early decision. Early action is also sending a message that the student has time management skills and is very interested in the school and is getting stuff out early. It's a way to show demonstrated interest to apply early action as well. Not all schools offer early decision. Not all schools offer early action. There is a early action called single choice early action or restricted early action, which does ask a student to commit to only applying to their school early action, although it's still non-binding. So if a student applies early action restricted or single choice early action, they're only going to be applying early action to that one school. Those schools want to know that your students are that interested in that school that they're willing to give up the option to apply early action and hear back early to other schools. So it's not, you won't see it a lot. It's not super common, but some schools do have that choice. The other things to be mindful of are rolling admissions. So think of rolling as first come, first serve. They're accepting kids all year long. They don't usually get full, but they might stop accepting certain majors or run out of this merit scholarship and things like that. So with rolling, it's always good to apply earlier than later. Regular decision, those deadlines are typically maybe January 1st, January 15th, sometimes as late as March. So, it's just something to be aware of. The regular decision pools are typically the largest pools out there. And it is possible for students who apply early decision or early action to be deferred to the regular decision pool. So sometimes students who apply to those early deadlines will get a letter saying, we'd like to keep an eye on things. We're going to review your application. Again, we're deferring you to the regular decision pool. So they're not being outright denied, but they're looking for maybe more test scores or for those mid-year grades to be really strong. So that does happen sometimes as well. Something else you might see is a priority deadline. Those are typically an outreach option where a school will send a student an application with a priority deadline, or maybe if you visit campus, they give you a priority deadline, or sometimes it's to be considered for certain scholarships. It really depends on the school what they mean by priority deadline, but it's not a hard deadline. It's more of a soft deadline if you want to be considered for certain things, or if you want to hear back at a certain time. Some schools will say, if you meet our priority deadline of December 1st, we promise we'll get a decision to the student within 2 weeks or something like that. So you kind of have to read what their priority deadline is. This is just information on how to research colleges, and I'm going to show you on Naviance when I get through the slides. But factors that we feel like it's important for students to be thinking about is location. Talking to your students about, like, sure, Florida sounds great. It's warm and sunny. There's a beach, but like you can't come home on the weekends to do laundry. Mom's not making dinner for you, that kind of stuff. Like you're going to be there, right? You can't just come home on the weekends or part-time jobs, things like that. Size. So again, sometimes coming from Springfield in a small school, being used to having 25 students in a class and being able to really make connections with our teachers benefits some students and really meet some students' learning style. There's some schools that have significantly larger class sizes. Sometimes it's those general electives, like everybody has to take English 101 as a freshman in college. As an example, some schools have that taught in like an amphitheater with over 100 students. So just kind of looking at those things. Major classes would typically be smaller, a smaller cohort of students, but just thinking about that. The type of school as far as, their rigor of their classes and the culture there, whether it's like everybody's super competitive about getting your internships and research things and things like that, or whether it's more of a collaborative type environment. Obviously, the different majors offered, making sure that they have what your students interested in, or if they're not sure, making sure they have a lot of choices and things that the student is feeling drawn to. Special programs, whether that's athletics or performance groups or things like that. There's some schools where if you really like music, you can major in biology, but also be in all these performance groups. And there's other schools where those groups are more limited to people who are majoring in music, so just asking those types of questions. Extracurricular activities, making sure there's fun things to do, and college campuses have tons of fun things to do as far as extracurricular. There's a couple of years ago, the big thing was Quidditch on campuses. We would go to like college workshops for counselors, and the students were loving to tell us about Quidditch. So just knowing, what's available for your student that's outside of the classroom, so they had that balance. Financial considerations as well, and Mr. Scheer will touch on that later, but there's some schools that, they'll flat out say on their website whether they are need blind or need aware. So some schools are looking at finances as part of the admissions process. Other schools, financial information has nothing to do with the admission process. Do they offer merit scholarships? So merit scholarships are based on grades, where some schools don't offer that. They only offer financial aid for financial need. And then the admission criteria, seeing, what the expectations are as far as GPA, score requirements, things like that, certain classes, and things like that. So these are just sort of a few things to kind of keep in mind. Our pictures are over the end of this, but I believe that this this says that junior meetings will be scheduled starting in January. So we'll send a letter home reminding parents and students that they can reach out to us to schedule a one-on-one meeting with us. So that's usually the parent, the student, and the counselor. Parents aren't required to come, but we certainly encourage it. And that's more geared individually to your student and what they've shared with us as far as what they're interested in, and kind of making some recommendations and kind of walking them through the process and answering any questions one-on-one. In Naviance, and again, I'm going to show you this in a couple minutes, there is the college rep visit schedule with which Ms. McDonald had talked about. We've had many reps come visit us this fall. Those reps are open to juniors and seniors. Most of them are in person. The schedule is shared on the morning announcements. It's emailed to students. It is posted on the guidance door, so they could just walk by and see the reps visiting for that day. But in many cases, that person is somebody who will be involved with your student's application at some point, reading the essay, reading the applications, and possibly being part of a decision. So we do encourage students to get there, even if they're like not super sure they're interested, but they want to learn more. It's a great way to hear about different programs on college campuses and check in with admissions counselors and get direct answers from somebody who works at the college. There are surveys and career interests on resume and resume writing on Naviance, where students can take personality tests and career interest surveys, where it's asking them a bunch of questions about what they like to do and what they're good at. And then it's giving them a very detailed report about how their personality and interests and strengths kind of match up with different job skills, different careers, and different college majors. And then it links them right to colleges that have that major, or it can link them to ONET, which is a government site that can tell them by state, what somebody's starting salary is for that specific job. So it just has a ton. It's a really good resource for finding information. There's a college search tool on there I'm going to show you as well. And students will need to request letters of recommendation through this. We'll be having a similar presentation for your students this year, and we will show them exactly where to add the teachers for teacher recommendations. We'll be reminding them at the end of the school year to make sure they do that. So those are some of the features that are used a lot in Naviance. This is just more information when students are considering schools, making sure that when they're looking at those schools, that they have schools where they're pretty much in line with what this school is sharing as their average GPA and scores and requirements. Some schools they might fall a little bit short, but kind of on the borderline, and some schools where they're actually above the expectations, kind of help students have a more well-rounded list so that they're not all applying to the same type of schools. I would say between 5 and 10 schools is a healthy number of schools. We certainly have students who apply to only one, which is pretty stressful on our end for me anyway. And then we have students that apply to 20, which I feel like is way too much. And when they get accepted to, 7 of them, it's really hard for them to make that decision. So encouraging your student to really rule schools out that they aren't super interested in. If they're not going to be accepted if they're not going to be excited when they get that acceptance letter, that's really not, I wouldn't really recommend applying there. So it should be all schools that your student would be thrilled to go to and has some serious interest in. Definitely doing those rep visits like we talked about, talking to admission reps, whether here, attending campus open houses, in-person and virtual sessions. So there's definitely open houses happening now. For a long time they were virtual, but now they're back to being on campus. It's a really great way for a student to kind of get on campus and get that feel for whether they could see themselves there or not, see where they would be living, where would they be eating, where would they be learning, talk to people on campus, students who are there, faculty, trying to get a feel for how happy students are, just stopping one person and having the student ask, what's your favorite thing about this school? Just getting some real life experience on that actual campus. And then again, just a reminder, we encourage that students start this early. Again, we're going to have a guidance lesson on that, on researching colleges and using Naviance and getting out there to see colleges. This might be also, something students take into consideration is if they're want to be an athlete at school. So Division I and Division II athletics have to meet certain eligibility to be considered for the teams. And they do have to fill out some information and start a profile on the NCAA website. This eligibility center is where they start that. And they do have the students request us post a transcript at the end of this year. So they can start seeing that they're meeting those requirements. to keep in mind, again, if somebody's going to visit a campus and they're interested in playing Division I soccer for that school, reaching out to the coach ahead of time and seeing if they can talk to an athlete on the team is a great idea. Like, what's your schedule like? Typically at most schools, Division I and Division II, athletes are almost like an athlete first and a student second. Their academic schedule is based around their athletic schedule. And there's going to be different requirements than if they weren't Division I and Division II. So just making sure that they understand the commitment that's involved in that and how that would be different from if they weren't. And then there's also service academies that students may be considering, and just to be aware of the deadlines that are involved with that. A lot of that does start in junior year. I know for like the Naval Academy, they have to get recommendations from senators. So there's a big process. There's physical requirements and things like that. So if they're seriously considering that, they can be talking to recruiters now and kind of getting more information about that. ROTC, again, same thing, where a student is going to a four-year college. At Kutztown, one of my roommates did Army ROTC. And they were getting up at 5 o'clock every morning to go to this armory to do workouts and special trainings, and they would go away for like a week and things like that. So just understanding what that means. Sometimes there's a considerable scholarship involved with ROTC programs. So just to take that into consideration as well. And there is always a commitment to join whatever it's the Navy, Army, afterwards, there is commitment involved with that to those armed forces. These are just some upcoming college fairs that I just put in here just because they're soon. So just to keep in mind of that, these are also in the e-blast. And those college fairs will have college reps from those colleges where students can kind of, again, interact and things like that. It's definitely showing demonstrated interest, but it's a way to get more information and see multiple schools in one shot, not the campus, but have a conversation with somebody who works there and learn more about them. This is just a junior year checklist just to kind of keep students on track. I'm not going to read every one, but again, just making sure that they're starting that process now, looking at schools, starting to think about who they would ask for recommendations, checking in with their counselors as questions come up. Like, they can always come in and ask us. Lunch and Learn is a great time to pop in with questions, but they can always email us for an appointment. We're happy to schedule a longer time with them if that's what they need. Registering for the ACTs or SATs, just to at least take it once is a good idea in case they do find a school that's requiring them, and visiting campuses. And again, this is just more reminders, just continuing to search over the summer. You can really start those applications. Most applications open August 1st. So it is certainly possible that somebody could have an application done by the time they come back to school, and then they're just checking in with teachers, checking in with us, maybe having an English teacher proofread their essay, and then they're kind of ready to go. So taking that time over the summer to kind of do applications and get things together is something we strongly encourage, because once they're back in school and then they've got homework and they've got sports and maybe a job, things just get really busy fast and it feels a little bit more overwhelming. So anything that they can do when they have time in the summer is a great benefit to them. Not sure what happened there. Oh, it's fancy. They come up afterwards. Okay. So again, more reminders. So applying early, again, keeping in mind that those earlier deadlines, the students will get decisions back earlier. So, a regular decision of, December 15th might not hear till end of March, early April, whether they're accepted or not. And students do, unless they're applying to early decision, we'll have till May 1st to make the decision about where they're going. So May 1st is across the board, what colleges call deposit day. So you have to have a deposit down at a college by May 1st to save your seat and enroll for that next fall. So if students apply early, they apply to 6 schools, early action, and they get accepted to 3 or 4 of them, they know that by January 1st. So if maybe they've already ruled one out, so now they're torn between 3 of them, they really like them, they would have from January 1st till May 1st to make that decision. They could go back and sit in on a class in the major they're going to major in. They could go back and take another tour. They could chat with the chair of the department, whatever they need to do to get more information to help them make that decision. They have that time. The regular decision schools, or if a student waits, they might not hear back till, like I said, at end of March, which gives them less than a month to make that decision. It depends on your student. Sometimes less time is better. Sometimes more time is better, right? So it just depends. But for the student and enjoying senior year, getting things out early lets them kind of be done with that process and just have to wait for those decisions so they can kind of enjoy senior year, get involved with more clubs and things like that. And not have this application stretching into their holiday break and kind of be overwhelming. So starting in the summer is a great way to kind of be able to meet those early deadlines without feeling stressed about it. Staying organized, making sure sometimes students will put things in a list, you know, their first choice, what the deadline is and so on, whatever works for them. Being their own advocate, you know, reaching out to admission reps. Most reps, if schools have them, assigned by school or region, you can find it right on the website. It'll say meet your admissions counselor. You know, Jane Smith is from Montgomery County in Pennsylvania. They can email that person directly and ask specific questions directly. That's really showing that they can advocate for themselves. It's showing demonstrated interest, but it's getting them, you know, information from the source and quickly rather than just having to search for it. And then this bottom thing here is just a reminder that emails should be personal emails, not school emails. We do not, our students aren't able to accept or receive incoming emails from outside of Springfield, our email domain, and just also making sure that it's somewhat professional when they're using their personal email, you know, initials or something like that, you know, not soccer sweetie or something like that, you know, so just making sure that they have an email that they're using for colleges, and then that they're checking the email. So that's also important. A lot of students will find out that they're accepted through an email. So it's just something that they're going to need to get in the habit of checking their email. All right, so I'm going to switch right now to Naviance.
There's a bunch of questions too.
Yeah. Why don't we just take some questions and then I'll go to Naviance.
Okay. The first question was about class rank, how that's calculated. So that is a weighted calculation and all that information is in the curriculum guide, which can be found on the high school website. And then there was a bunch of questions about, or some questions about the college rep visits. So those are available on the high school website. Ms. Kane updates those on a regular basis. There's also a sign outside of our guidance office door that she updates every week that lets students know who's going to be visiting and what time they're visiting. They all visit during lunch and learn, so there's really no, students do not have to miss class for those visits. And this information is also available in Naviance. So one more way that they're notified is there's announcements that are given when they are here. So there's really, it's really hard to miss those visits.
There's a question here about D3 athletes. So D1 and D2, you can receive an athletic scholarship. D3, they are not allowed to offer athletic scholarships. But what we find is typically if a D3 school really wants your child to participate in their athletic program, they will find money somehow. They'll come up with it. But they are, because of the NCAA rules, they are not allowed to offer what are called athletic scholarships.
There's a question about where you can download today's PowerPoint. So we can send out this PowerPoint to everybody, to all the junior parents. And also if anybody missed the presentation or has to leave for part of it, there's going to be a recording and I can email that out to anybody who wants it.
There's another question here about Naviance. Only students have Naviance app accounts. So to actually get into the Naviance account, you'd have to just work with your child with that. They have the account information. We started freshman year with them and created their accounts and did some career interest profilers with them, some personality inventories. Often kids do forget their passwords. So if your child has forgotten their password for Naviance, we can easily reset it. It's just a quick email to the student's counselor and we can take care of that pretty quickly.
And then there's one more question. Some of you may or may not know, but Jumpstart will not be running this summer. So there was a question if there's options to replace it. So the counselors will look into alternative options and we can share that information with parents when we have an answer on that. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that. There's one more question and then I'm going to let Ms. Barbone show you Naviance. So the question was, do 504 plans follow children to college? So students are entitled to accommodations and to receive support in high school. In college, it's a little bit different. So they can send their testing to the Office of Student Disabilities. Some of them call it something different. And they will let you know what types of accommodations they can provide. Typically extended time, a note taker, those are pretty typical accommodations that are easy for colleges to provide. Some of the more difficult, intricate accommodations might not necessarily be approved, but again, it will depend on the college or the university, and you can reach out to the college's student disability office to find out more information.
All right, so I'm just going to move on and just show you a couple things on Naviance quickly. If your students have questions or can't get in, they can just send them to us and we'll be happy to help them. We are also going to be reviewing this again with students in a guidance lesson with the juniors. So they will see this as well as like an actual lesson to kind of go through the same thing we're going through here. So I'm just going to point out quickly under self-discovery, this career interest profiler and this personality inventory right here. These are things that we've had the students do in 9th and 10th grade as part of the guidance lesson. Most students should have already done this. So if they click on it, it will bring them to their results page, which is pretty detailed about how their personality fits with certain careers and college majors. It kind of highlights their strengths for them and how those match with different careers and majors. So it's just something they can reflect on. Most students do feel like when they read that it does match how they feel. And then the career interest profiler is similar, but it's definitely more based on careers and work preferences. So like does somebody like to work individually with a group outside in an office, that kind of stuff, or, so it's asking them to really rate different situations. And then same thing, it's giving them it's a couple pages of results and then a ton of links that take them to careers and colleges and majors. So it's just kind of like a springboard to kind of be considering what majors might be the best for them, or what majors to kind of look at. Sometimes things come up on there that a student was never considering. And once they read what that person does every day, they're kind of like, hey, that does kind of sound interesting. I want to learn a little bit more about that. So if your students haven't done these, then they can certainly still do them. They just click on it and just start the assessment. And if they have, and they feel like, oh, I took that in freshman year and I don't know that I would answer the questions the same, they can let us know and we can reset it for them and they can retake it. But it's just a way to get some more feedback and help when they're thinking about what they're going to do after high school. This careers tab, same thing. So there's all sorts of links here where they can look up a certain career and see what kind of training or degrees a person needs in that career, what somebody who works in that career's daily job skills are. The classic one that comes up is like, somebody wants to be a nurse and then when we're asking them, do they like blood and like having to touch people and things like that, they're like, not really. So like just thinking about what matches their interest and what that person actually does in their job. There was another student who recently was telling me that they wanted to do, I think it was something like some sort of earth science, and like they really love the outdoors and want to be outside and things like that. But the specific thing they were interested in, it's more of a lab job where they're not outside. You know what I mean? So just kind of looking at those things and being aware of what careers are related to those specific majors. And they can do all sorts of things with this too. This Road Trip Nation takes them to a way where they can search different types of careers. And there's tons of videos. They're just like 5 minutes of somebody speaking about their role in that career, or how they got started in it, or how they picked that major career. So like, it's nice because there's like, you know, short clips of real people in those jobs and careers talking about their specific experience. And there's everything you can think of, from, you know, a rap artist to like a fashion designer to a biologist to criminologist. There's all sorts of things. So that's a great way for them to get more information as well. So under colleges, they can definitely put in a college name here and search any college that they're thinking of. They can do this advanced college search, which takes them to a really quick survey where they can pick, you know, some students are like, I'm not leaving Pennsylvania, I need to stay in Pennsylvania. Other kids are like, how do I get as far away from Pennsylvania as possible? So they could do certain regions or states. They could leave it blank if they don't care where the school is. They can do the search multiple times, show me schools in Pennsylvania, and then go back and be like, okay, let me do the whole Mid-Atlantic region. Students, you know, this is how big or small it is. So again, when we're thinking about class size and learning experience, if you're looking for certain backgrounds, out-of-state students, there's different things you can do here as well. Admissions is how selective the school is. So if you're looking at schools less than 25%, they're super competitive. And so on. Again, you can leave this blank and then look at that later on the actual college website, or you can do it during the search. So athletics, again, some students only know that they want to play Division I soccer. So this is the only thing they're entering, and then it's going to generate a list of schools in the United States that have Division I soccer. Majors, they can type in a specific major here. And then, or they can go in here and do certain, you know, if there's certain things they're specifically interested in, they can click that and see all the different types if they're looking for a very specific major. Costs, if they're looking to stay in state or within a certain tuition range, and then special programs. So this is just a quick way for students to generate a list that takes out all of those schools that they would have no interest in applying to. If they are not have no interest in going to Kentucky, that it's not going to put Kentucky on the list, right? So it's making a manageable list set by the parameters that this student set. So, and like I said, they could do that multiple ways. So that's a great way to kind of start looking at schools. Just to go back to their homepage, they can start listing schools that they're thinking about as juniors under this colleges I'm thinking about. This is just a demo student. So this just has a couple on here. So something that's nice about this is they can see quickly the schools they're thinking about and look right down the line and see whether they are common application schools or not. So this little computer in here doesn't have a CA, so they do not accept the common application. This is part of the Pennsylvania state system. So remember, they have their own application that you can use for all the state schools, but these other 3 schools you'd be able to use one application for, because a CA stands for common application. If you look at a school and click on a school, they have their own kind of snapshot page that has just quick information that they can look at. There's deadlines over here. So this is the next deadline for this school. It'll tell you how big or small it is. Down here, it will show ranges for accepted students. So this is Springfield, the range of GPAs for students accepted to Kutztown for Springfield students. They don't share the national one. Some schools will share the national on here. And this is like SAT and ACT ranges. So if your student was in here, it kind of plots them on here. So it will be either in here or over here with their GPA. So it's specific to them if your student's actually logged in. I'm just like a demo student right now. This admissions section is very helpful, I think, for students because it's very visual. So these are accepted students from Springfield are the checked green boxes, and the red X's were denied students. I think this is 6 years worth of information if the student shared with us that they were accepted or denied. So that information's in there. It's just like a quick visual. Again, it plots the student on the graph when the student's in their own account. They're this little silhouette of like a head and shoulders. So it actually shows up on here just to give the student more information about how other Springfield students fared in the admissions decisions and where they fall in relation to those other Springfield students. Going back to that colleges I'm applying list, if a student, what happened? If a student, colleges I'm thinking about, they can add all sorts of schools to this. Some students will have 20 schools here. They can hit this compare me button and it's going to compare them. So I don't have any information here, so I didn't match with any of them, but some of them will be green if a student's GPAs and schools are above the average for those schools, and then some will be red if it's lower. So again, it's just a quick way for them to see all their schools on one page that they're interested in. They don't want them all to be red. They want some green, some red, some that they're, the average is pretty much higher than them, others where they're just over the border, maybe just a little bit. So it's just a way to make sure that their list is diversified and kind of get more information. Just to show you quickly, this is where students will add teacher letters of recommendation next year, and we'll show them that in the junior conference, in the junior lesson, guidance lesson. So you can see all of our teachers are already preloaded in here. They do this after they've asked a teacher in person. Anything else I should show on here? Mr. Shearer, Mrs. McDonald, quickly. Just wanted to give parents like a quick snapshot. It's a really great resource. Scholarships, let me just show you that real quick. So under scholarship search, and again, most scholarships are for seniors, but there may be some for juniors or for all grades. We post them on here when they are sent to us. So from the actual sources. So these are some upcoming scholarships. These are actual applications. And then down here, we do have some scholarship search sites where students can kind of go, and they can set up accounts with these sites. I would just put out there that the feedback from students is once they do this, they do start getting all sorts of marketing information from companies that charge for scholarship information and from banks in regards to loans and things like that. But you don't have to set up an account to search for scholarships. So you can see there's scholarships posted down here. I would say this changes by the week. Here's $1,000 for a Halloween Scary Stories scholarship, so they can look through, and some of these will be for juniors. These aren't all for seniors, but kind of being aware of this and kind of staying on this. They'll probably be more eligible for some more next year, but there are definitely some for juniors as well. And this is just an example of one of the sites. FastWeb is another one. So just to keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to.
There was just a question about the data for the scattergram. How many years?
I think is it 6?
I don't know the exact amount. It's not forever though. It's within the recent years. So the data is that they're seeing on that scattergram is not indefinite.
Yeah. And it also depends on the student sharing with us the decision. So we encourage students to share that information with us because it's anonymous when it's accessed by the student in Naviance. So it's more for data for other students to kind of get a picture of how they would fare with admissions. But way more students apply to Kutztown than is showing on there because not everyone shared that information with us. So it's just a general information to kind of make some more educated decisions for the student.
There's
All right,
another related, there's also
Yeah.
one more Naviance question, and it asks about if every college or university is listed in Naviance.
So I would say almost, I wouldn't say every, and it is also up to the college to keep their information updated. So the best source is always going to be the college website. But Naviance is a way where the format is the same and they can quickly get information. So it does some information you'll look at, you'll pull up a school and you'll notice that there's less information than say another school that has a ton of information. That's that school choosing to share that information or not. So I would say most schools are on there and do share a lot of information, but I've definitely seen schools that it just says the name and some deadlines and very general information. So I would always defer to the school's website for specific and just confirming deadlines and things like that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Shear, who's going to start with testing information.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. We know this is a long presentation with a lot of information for you. It's going to be recorded and will be distributed. So if you need to go back, you can fast forward through different parts and collect the information that you really need. So I'm going to talk to you about the fun part, your kids sacrificing their Saturdays to take the SAT or ACT. As Mrs. McDonald talked about before, there are a lot of schools that have gone to test optional, and especially since COVID and the pandemic has happened, but there are still some schools that will require testing for admissions purposes. So your kids right now probably don't have a sense of like all of the colleges that they're going to apply to. So we do recommend that they sit for either the SAT or the ACT at least once, so that if they do need to submit scores for admissions purposes, that they have that on record. They at least have one testing that they've done. They do offer many tests throughout the spring of junior year and even into the fall of senior year. We've had students do that too, and we'll go through the testing dates in a little bit. But the SAT and ACT are the two most popular admissions tests. Every college in the country will accept them if it is required for admissions purposes, okay? The SAT is 3 hours in length. So on a typical testing Saturday, students arrive here, at their testing center about 7:30. They move to their testing rooms at about, 8 o'clock, something like that. They do some pre-administration information, and then they get started with testing, and it's 3 hours. The ACT, the basic ACT, is also 3 hours. But the ACT also has an optional essay. Now, a lot of colleges aren't, first of all, not using the testing, and a lot of colleges are not really using that optional essay. So if your student has an idea of some of the schools that they want to apply to, they could always go to that school's website and look at the admissions requirements and see if there is a testing requirement for admissions purposes. And then if there is, they will list SAT or ACT, and with the ACT, they will, give you a little asterisk about the optional essay is required or it's not required. Okay, so that's one way to find out if your student actually needs to sit for this. So that's those one big difference with the SAT and the ACT. So the SAT, two skill areas: evidence-based reading and writing, and then math. So it's just the reading and writing are just understanding passages, expressions of ideas, standard English conventions, all that type of stuff that you would see. Same thing as like what we all took when we were younger and in high school looking for college things. The math is going to be problem solving. It's going to be very heavy algebra. So if your kids have been through Algebra 2, they should be in pretty good shape. There are some questions about geometry there and a couple trigonometry, but more it's going to be really heavy algebra up to like Algebra 2 levels. The scoring is between 200 and 800 points per section. So 200 and 800 points for the reading, 200 and 800 points for the math, and then they combine those for a total score of between 400 and 1,600 points. Okay. The essay component for the SAT has been discontinued, and that just happened in the last year and a half. They decided that it wasn't worthwhile, so they changed that. The SAT, what you can see here, the reading section, that is the first section that students will go through, the 65 minutes. There are 52 questions. So students will read a passage and then answer questions and the information is found in the passages that they just read. Same thing for writing and language. It's all Scantron or multiple choice. 44 questions in 35 minutes. Then they have 2 math sections. The first math section is shorter. It's only 25 minutes, but students cannot use a calculator for this section. The second section, they can use a calculator, and then that's going to be a little bit longer section of 55 minutes. Once your kids have taken the SATs, the score reports become available online 2.5 to 3 weeks after the test. If you want a paper report, you're going to have to request that at the time of registration, and will come in the mail, usually about 4 weeks afterward. Okay. So the subject test is something that the College Board and the SAT used to offer. They were hour-long tests that were in specific subject areas. So there might be a math subject test or a biology subject test. They have discontinued that, but if any of your kids have taken that, that can still be submitted to colleges if they scored well on those tests. But this has gone away just because colleges weren't really using this information a lot. So the College Board decided that with the prevalence of the SAT, a lot of the subject test information was being asked in the SAT or through AP exams. So those are all specific courses. ACT has 4 sections: English, math, reading, and science. So that's one big difference between the SAT and the ACT, is that there is a science section. The science section scares kids a little bit, but it's really, the ACT provides the graphs and charts that the students are going to be asked questions about. So they provide them with all that information, and then the students just use that information to answer the questions. It's not like they're asking the kids to recall all the periodic, all the elements off the periodic table or anything like that. It's not a memorization thing. They give the kids the information, and they just need to interpret that data and other information to answer the questions. Math is a little bit different with the ACT in that there is a heavier emphasis on geometry and trigonometry. Still mostly algebra is going to be asked here, but there will be a little bit more geometry and trigonometry on the ACT. And then there's the writing test, which is optional. So students, when they register for the ACT, have 2 options. They have an option to take the ACT with the writing test, and an option to take the ACT without the writing test. All students will sit for the ACT basic components, those 4 sections first. And then if they have registered for the writing section, that will come after they've taken the regular ACT. ACT is a little bit more fast-paced. There are, as you can see down below, the English, there's 75 questions in 45 minutes. And part of that is what students have told me over the years, is that the ACT seems to be more simplified in the way that they're asking their questions, whereas the SAT may be a little bit more confusing as to like, well, what are they really asking for? I'm unsure, like it's not always clear what they're asking for, where the ACT is pretty like straightforward. We want to know this question. We want to know the answer to this question. So you'll see that across the board with the ACT, that there may be more questions than the SAT, and a faster pace. So 75 questions for the English, 60 questions in 60 minutes for the math. You can see reading is 40 questions in 35 minutes, and same thing with science, 40 questions in 35 minutes as well. The optional essay, there will be 1 prompt, and the students will have 40 minutes to write their essay. And then that essay is going to be scored by two readers, and then they will get a different score for that, which is 1 to 6 in 4 categories. So they will either get between a 2 and a 12 for their essay scoring. The scoring for the regular ACT, if we can go back 1 slide, please. So the scoring for the regular ACT, the students receive a score between 1 to 36 for each section that they take. So English 1 to 36, and math and reading and science are all the same. And what they do is they then will take an average of those scores, and that's how they come up with their composite score. So that is when your students receive a score report from the ACT, they will see the subscores in English, math, reading, and science, and then they will see their composite score, which again is the average of their 4 scores in those areas. Okay, next slide. All right, the ACT, one thing that they will provide students, if they have taken the ACT multiple times, so more than once, they can provide students with a super score. And what that is essentially is if the student takes it more than one time, they can take scores from the 2 different testings, and they can see if the student tested better in reading, for instance, in the first time they took it, and they were better in that than the second time. And then the second time they took science, the second time they took the ACT, they were better in the science, and they can really take the higher averages for each of those 2 seatings and come up with a super score that incorporates the highest scoring for both of the 2 or multiple times that they take the ACT. And that can be distributed to colleges through the ACT reports. They did propose a couple of years ago to do section retestings where students could go to a test center and just retake one of the sections to improve their score just in that section. And that's been postponed for now. That may come up again, but for now it's going to be postponed. The test fees for the SAT and the SAT is a flat $60. The ACT is with no writing, it's going to be $63, and the plus writing is going to be $88. And as we talked about with score reports, they'll be sent out electronically unless otherwise requested. Now, when your kids do register for the SAT or ACT, they will get 4 free score reports at that time of registration, and for the SAT following 9 days after they take the test. The score reports are basically, that's the information that they can send out to the colleges if they'd like to do so at that time. Unfortunately, like if the kids sit and take it in the spring of their junior year, they may not know all of the colleges that they want to apply to. So often what happens is kids may or may not use all the free score reports, and they wind up after they start to submit applications, they will reach back out to the College Board and access the scores through their accounts through the College Board or through the ACT and request that their scores be sent to the colleges who are requiring testing for admissions purposes. There is typically a fee associated with those score reports at that time. So the major differences, ACT has that science section, SAT does not, but through the reading and writing components of the SAT, there may be some science themes. The SAT has one no calculator math section where the ACT, the students can use the calculator throughout the math section. Again, the ACT has more geometry and trigonometry in it. The SAT provides more time per question. And reading ACT is on a 9th grade level throughout the exam, whereas the SAT reading levels will vary. The ACT has that super scoring option. One thing that you should know about the SAT and the ACT, there is no incorrect answer policy. So what one test strategy for kids is if they're down to like the last minute of the testing time for that section, and they have a bunch of questions that they haven't completed, they can just pick a letter or randomly pick letters and just fill in dots, and that may allow them to get a couple correct, but if they get a bunch wrong, it's not going to hurt them. So which test to take? So all of your kids at this point have been exposed to both the SAT and the ACT. So we recently took the PSAT earlier this month. We had all the 11th graders sit for that. And then back in the spring of sophomore year, the students took the pre-ACT. So they have a good feel of which test, hopefully they have a good feel of which test they prefer and which one worked better for them. So students should, rely on their experiences with those 2 tests and maybe move forward with the test that they feel most comfortable with. There's also opportunities to go to the testing websites and answer simple questions, look at, some retired tests and things like that. There's free SAT prep through Khan Academy on the College Board website. There's free ACT prep on the website. There's full practice tests in all 4 areas. So students have an opportunity before they actually register for testing to go ahead and experience the test again if they need a refresher. Get familiar with each test to determine which format is best. And then really colleges that are requiring testing for admissions purposes don't care which one you take. They have no preference whatsoever, whether it's ACT or SAT that you're going to submit. Here are the SAT and ACT dead test dates. The little asterisk means that we are hosting them. So February would be the next time that we are going to host the ACT, and March will be the next time that we will host the SAT. You'll see other test dates there and other schools in our area. We're fortunate to have a lot of high schools in our area. They will be test centers for these two tests as well. So students have the opportunity to go and take the tests at other high schools as well. You'll have to register for those tests on your own through either the ACT website or the SAT website. There are links directly to these the testing registration pages. So when you do receive that information, you'll know exactly where to go. Test optional is as Mrs. McDonald talked about. You can click on this link for Fair Test. Fair Test will give you all of a list of all of the colleges in the U.S. that are not requiring testing for admissions purposes. Okay, there are some schools, and you'll have to go dig a little bit further into the financial aid websites of the colleges. There are some schools that will require some testing for eligibility for scholarships, and that's going to be specific to each school. We don't have a list of that. You're going to have to do some research on the colleges that your children are interested in to see if there's a requirement there for testing. And then advanced placement. We do have a ton of kids that are taking advanced placement courses. So it's really each college has their own policy as to how they handle advanced placement. Typically, they're looking for a score of 3 or higher. Students can score between 1 and 5 on the advanced placement test. 5 is the highest, 1 is the lowest. So they're usually looking for a 3 or higher. Some colleges are taking that right in and giving college credit. So students that receive a 3 or a 4 or 5, depending on the college, may automatically have some college credit. Some are using it for course placement. So if they took an English Lit exam and they scored a 4, the college may automatically move them into English 102, and they can just skip English 101. It's really dependent upon each school, each university, and right there is a link, and that's right on the College Board website. You can find the AP credit policy on the College Board website, and it tells you exactly how each college handles AP credit, and it's actually AP exam specific. So they'll give you information about how they handle stat, how they handle English, how they handle calc and the sciences. Each individual AP course, they have the policy for each college. And then we're going to talk a little bit about financial aid basics. Just to give you some information about this, we do host a financial aid night where we have somebody from the Pennsylvania higher education come out and talk about financial aid. So they're the experts really in it. And that's going to be in the fall of senior year for you guys. And then we will have a FAFSA completion night, which is the free application for federal student aid, where we get another person who's an expert in this, help parents walk through the FAFSA. But there's 2 types of financial aid: merit-based, which is going to be based on academics, and then need-based, which is going to be based on financial income. And when you do the FAFSA, when families complete the FAFSA, they're able to send the FAFSA information out to 10 different colleges. And then what the financial aid or the federal government does with the FAFSA is determines how much a student can afford to pay for their child's education for that year. The FAFSA has to be done each year a student is in college, and then you'll come up with possibly different estimated family contributions each year depending on your financial changes. Sources of financial aid: there's federal financial aid, there's state, there's institutional aid, so that's college specific, and then there is private, and that can be through scholarships and such. So federal financial aid is going to be through grants. That's free money. That's money that students never need to pay back. And there is some need-based, and that's going to be, again, financial, dependent upon your financials, and then merit-based, and that's going to be grades and things like that. There are federal student loans that your kids can take out. Direct subsidized Stafford loans, they are interest-free. The unsubsidized Stafford loans, they accrue interest while the student is in college. It's a low interest rate, but it is still accruing while the student is in college. And they're limited on the amount of loans they can take through the Stafford, the amount each year. For freshmen, it's going to be the lowest amount that they can possibly offer because they're more of a higher risk. So they offer a little bit of a lower amount. I think it's around $6,000 for freshman year. It changes each year. And then as they continue through college, that number goes up. There's work study benefits. So some colleges will, when you get your financial aid award letter, will include work study. That's something that students need to check off when they do the FAFSA. Work study could be working in the library a certain number of hours a week. It could be working athletic events. It could be a number of different things on campus, but it's basically an on-campus job with the university or college that your children are attending. The way that work study works is every month or bi-weekly, your student will receive a paycheck from the university for the work that they have done. Now, the check is made out to the kids, and the kids have the opportunity to either pocket that money and buy pizza, that's their pizza fund for the month, or they can walk right over to the financial aid office and they can deposit that check with them. They can hand that check over to them, and that goes towards their tuition. So really, that's one thing with work study. They do build it into a lot of financial aid award letters, but that's a little bit of a more tricky instance. Whereas with loans and grants and merit-based scholarships and things like that, that goes directly to the university. But the work study is money that goes to the kids, and then they have to choose what they're going to do with it. And then any males must register with Selective Service to qualify for federal aid. Other sources of income, there's state. So through Pennsylvania, there's the FIA grant program, and that's going to be based on financial need. That there's a link for that. They must attend a FIA approved college or university. Within the state of Pennsylvania, we do have reciprocal agreements with other states. You can see there are a few, but typically, actually always, if you are eligible for the FIA grant and you go to a university outside of the state of Pennsylvania, you're going to get a lot less than you would if you attended a school in Pennsylvania. So they do decrease the number of money that they give you if you're going out of state. There's institutional aid, so that's within the college. There's scholarships and grants. Again, those are two things that kids get and awarded to them, and they never have to pay back. That is free money. There are some requirements for scholarships. So a student may get a $60,000 scholarship spread over 4 years, but they have to maintain a certain GPA, or there might be other things about it, stipulations where they're going to give you $15,000, but it's only for your freshman year. And then after that, that scholarship money goes away. So really reading the fine print and taking a look at the financial aid award letter and working with the financial aid office at that university to determine, to make sure that you're on, there's some clarity there as far as that goes. And then other than the Stafford loans that kids can take out, there are private loans and scholarships and employee programs. So where you work, they may offer some scholarships. They may offer some loans for college students as well. There are private loans that sometimes parents take out to kind of meet the gap between what a student owes towards the tuition for that year. So the FAFSA, again, you can apply for the FAFSA or complete the FAFSA after October 1st of your senior year. So you don't have to wait for acceptances to college. You don't have to wait for submission of applications. This is totally separate from the application completion program. So October 1st is when you're going to do that. So after October 1st, there are making sure that you're meeting college deadlines. So a lot of different schools have their own specific deadline for financial aid. And so they want you to complete the FAFSA and have it submitted to them within a certain time period. Again, on the FAFSA, you can list up to 10 colleges. And then even if your student is applying to more than 10 colleges, after you've submitted the FAFSA one time, you can log back in and remove some schools and then submit it again to include all the additional schools over 10 that your child might be applying to. You can go to this website, fsaid.ed.gov for federal student aid number. So you're going to need like some financial information, an account information for your child and for you before you complete the FAFSA. Only go to the FAFSA website that's linked there. There are other imposters out there, and they will charge you a fee for completing what they say is the FAFSA. The FAFSA is free, so you should never, ever pay for completion of the FAFSA. And then you can also complete the FIA application at the end of the FAFSA, and that's if you want to receive state money. The CSS profile is something that is offered by the College Board. There are some colleges that require this information. It delves a little bit more into your financials and the things that you own and those types of things. This is more for more selective schools. They want to get a better sense of your financial need at that university. And you would also do this in the fall of the student's senior year, and it's usually offered right around the same time as the FAFSA, so usually after the beginning of October. So there are other resources for financial, when you're trying to figure out the college finances. Each college in the country has to have a net cost calculator. That's usually on the financial aid website of the college's website, and you can check that out there. There's the FAFSA forecaster for preview for eligibility. We have a financial aid night. Like I said, it's usually September or October. We will have somebody come in and talk to you about financial aid. And then we have another site or another evening where we have somebody come in and walk through line by line the FAFSA and help you complete that and answer any questions that you may have about that. Really great people to reach out to in these situations are the financial aid officers at the colleges. They're going to tell you what your student might be eligible for. They're going to be able to point you towards the net cost calculators and where those are linked, and so you can get a general sense of like how much is it going to cost me for my child to go to that university. In our planning guide, which is on our school website under the counseling section, we have there's a financial aid section that answers a lot of these questions as well. All right, so I guess this is our time to answer any additional questions that we have here listed.
So here's a question about applying to colleges as an undeclared major. Is that not a good idea? I'll take that.
Okay.
So I think it depends on the college and university. I was at Westchester the other day and a counselor asked that question. And they said it's not going to hurt their application in any way. That might vary from school to school. It might be more competitive at certain schools. It really just depends on the college. And I think that's a really good question to ask the admissions reps when you go to visit those colleges. I don't know if any of you have anything else to add to that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
The next question is, where is the best place to find my student's current GPA? And that is in Home Access Center. And then the question was also about how to register for the SAT, which Mr. Shearer just went on, just discussed. And there's also another question about where to sign up for the ACT. So all of that information is on the SAT website, which is collegeboard.org. And then the ACT website, which is act.org, and you can find all the registration information and registration deadlines on there.
Question about pre-ACT scores. Those score reports were distributed to students last spring.
I have a copy in my office. You can reach
Yeah.
out to me if you need. We all do.
And then, what reason would you need a paper copy of SAT results? Really, if they're going to send it out to schools, it's going to go electronically because they want that, colleges want that electronic file. I think the paper copy is just for people who prefer paper over electronics.
So this is a SAT, ACT question. Maybe you can answer this, Mr. Sher. It says, do colleges only see the SAT or ACT scores you send, or will you see all the scores? If kid didn't do well on one test, for example, will it be seen?
Yeah, so I mean, so for the SAT, the previous score reports or scores from a previous testing will be included in the student score report. But the admissions counselors that we talk to, they're only looking for the scores that are going to be the best representation of that student. So there may be a circumstance where your child didn't do as well the first time they took the SAT because it was, first time jitters, or they didn't sleep the night before, or whatever it may be, and then took it a second time and really knocked it out of the park. The college admissions people are not looking to hurt the kids. They want to see, what the best scores are, the best representation for their students. The ACT is a little bit different, where the score reports, they don't list all of the ACT scores, just usually for that seating. So you may need to send test scores for a couple different seatings when you are sending those out to colleges. And AP tests, how do AP tests figure in? Are they used for submission process? Do students have to sign up for them, or are they just given in the AP classes? So for AP exams this year, the school district is picking up all exam fees, and we will test all of the students in any AP course, okay? So if your student has multiple APs, they will take an exam for each of those AP classes. We will send out a schedule to the students in the spring. So the first 2 weeks of May are when the AP exams are. There are morning sessions and afternoon sessions, and we will make the students aware of their test dates well in advance. The teachers, the AP exam schedule is already out. So if you go to College Board and look up AP exam dates, you'll see the calendar for AP exam dates, and the teachers of the exams of the courses already know when their exam is going to be given. And so they already have like a timeline of what they're trying to cover in class leading up to that exam. And they'll do practice tests for the exam, so the kids kind of get an idea of what they can expect when they sit down for the test.
There's a question, do I need to be concerned if my child does not take honors AP courses? Will college admission be more difficult? I would say no. It depends on the student and the school. Not honors and AP courses are not appropriate for every student. We encourage students to challenge themselves according to what they're able to do. Certainly, if your child's getting all A's in academic classes, the college might look at that and say, why did this child not challenge themselves and take some honors or AP classes? But if that's a good fit for your child, an academic course, then we wouldn't want students to take things that are too difficult for them, and the colleges will take that into account. Like I said, there is a college for every student. You just have to find the right fit.
So another question here about do we recommend taking both the SAT and ACT? I mean, students can do that. Students can take both. Like I went over the pricing of it. So, to save yourself $60 and knowing that the students have been exposed to both tests and that there are resources on each SAT and the ACT websites, I would just do some homework on that and see what your child's comfort level is with the test, and then go with that test. If you want if you want your child to take both, you can submit scores from the SAT and ACT to colleges that require testing. They will take a look at both, and they'll again determine what is the best representation of your child. They have correlation scales because of what the SAT and ACT comparisons are, because they are on different scoring scales. But if you do your homework right now, before the testing season of the spring of of the student's junior year. The student can sit for the test that they feel most comfortable with and then submit those scores from that test. If testing again is required for admissions purposes.
And just to mention as well, if your student is eligible for free and reduced lunch, they may be eligible for a fee waiver for the SATs or ACTs. So just have them come and check in with us. Down the road, that also is tied to eligibility for a fee waiver for college application fees. That's all tied to free and reduced lunch. So if the student prefers to bring lunch and you're like, I'm not filling out the application, you might want to reconsider filling out that application, because that is the only eligibility we can go by. And that's for the SAT and ACT fee to take the tests, and then college application fees. And it can also cover sending the scores if you go over that for free score reports to be sent to colleges.
So there's a question about class rank. Class rank is not available in Home Access Center. The counselors have access to that, so students can come see their counselors. That's calculated at the end of each, or in the summer of each school year. So we do have your children's most recent class rank available, and they can reach out to their counselor. And there's a question, what is the difference between weighted and unweighted GPA? Anybody wants to take that one?
I'll take it, I guess. So the formulas are in the student handbook, and I think the curriculum guide as well. But the weighted GPA is giving a little extra like quality points if a student has honors in AP courses. When someone's saying a weighted GPA, we're giving more weight to the honors and AP courses because of the rigor. An unweighted GPA is not giving extra weight. It's treating all courses with the same quality points.
And again, that
I don't know if
information
that
is on the
answers it. I
curriculum.
know it's confusing.
Yeah, the curriculum guide spells it out pretty clearly and shows you how to calculate that.
And that's accessible on our website of the high school website. Go under counseling, you'll be able to see a link to the curriculum guide.
Question is there a key for comments in Home Access Center? I believe so. I will have to look into that. Do you know if they give them a number?
I don't.
It's usually listed on the report card or the transcript, I believe the report card, but I can look into that. And if you want to email your child's counselor, we can look into that about the key for the comments in Home Access Center. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us anytime. We'll give a similar presentation to your students in their English classes this year, and then we will reach out to students and parents to schedule individual junior planning conferences. You're welcome. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Oh, sorry, there's a question. Recommendation letters, can we get them from a music lesson teacher outside of school?
Yeah, you can get outside letters. The one thing with letters from outside of this, outside of the high school, is we can't send them through Naviance. Only our teachers are able to upload their letters of recommendation to Naviance. So if your child is going to get a letter of recommendation from an outside source, whether that's an employer, a music teacher, whatever it may be, that would have to be sent to the college by that recommender. So your child would provide that person with addressed envelopes to the university's admissions offices and give that to the recommender, and then the recommender can write it and stuff that envelope and put it in the mail. But unfortunately with Naviance, and that's how we send our information electronically, outside people who don't have a Naviance account and cannot, we can't upload their letters to send them out electronically.
Thank you very much. Have a good Friday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Go
Go
Phillies.
Phillies. Go Phillies. Put on your red.